If you listen close, leather tells you how it's feeling. This boot has a soft voice, like a well-oiled hinge, but most today have a papery crackle because the hide is starving. I am going to bend this toe box completely over double, right where those alligator cracks start, until the tip touches the laces. The leather stays silent and smooth. It is still as supple as a new glove because of what we call traditional tallow beeswax boot grease. This simple blend does what liquid sprays can't. It feeds the heart of the hide. Most folks throw their boots away after 2 winters because road salt and backyard slush drink up every drop of natural oil. Once those lipids are gone, the internal protein fibers rub together like sandpaper until they snap. This grease replaces those lost oils to stop that friction. It is the difference between a boot that lasts 30 years and one that fails before the second spring thaw. You can see how the moisture just sits on the surface here rather than soaking in. Today, I will show you the 3-to-1 ratio we use and how to warm the leather so it drinks the grease. This isn't for soft suede or Sunday shoes. It will turn a tan boot a deep, dark chocolate brown permanently. But if you want a pair of work boots to last 15 years, this is the way. We will look at why beef fat belongs on a cow's hide and the one temperature that ruins a boot forever. I remember my father sitting by the wood stove in 1952, rubbing this warm, heavy-scented grease into our family's boots, while the winter wind rattled the summer kitchen windows. He knew that a dry boot was a dead boot. I can still see my father's hands in the lamplight. It was a sharp February in 1952, and the wind was finding every gap in the stone walls of our summer kitchen. He would bring the family's boots in and line them up on the floor near the wood stove. He was careful to keep them back a few feet, just where the air felt like a warm breath. He had an old blue tin of grease rendered during the autumn butchering. It had a heavy, honest scent of the field. The tallow looked like thick, pale cream, and as he worked it in with his thumbs, his skin would start to shine. He knew a man shouldn't expect a boot to work harder than the man who cares for it. There is a physical reason why that habit worked. If you look at a cow's hide, it is a dense network of protein fibers. When alive, the animal produces oils to keep those fibers sliding past each other. Once the hide is tanned, it loses its ability to replenish that lubrication. Road salt is the thief. Salt is what the university folks call hygroscopic. It thirsts for moisture. It pulls the water and the lipids right out of the leather, leaving the fibers brittle. When you walk in a salt-starved boot, those dry fibers rub against one another like thousands of tiny saws. Tallow is the right medicine because it is chemically similar to the oils the hide once held. Being a saturated fat, it stays solid at room temperature and won't leak out like thin vegetable oil. When salt tries to enter the leather, it finds the pores already occupied. I have seen boots neglected for one season develop white salt stains. That crust is proof the salt has chemically attacked the tannins. By the time you see alligatoring on the surface, the damage is already deep inside. In high heat, this grease may feel slightly tacky as it softens, but in a Lancaster winter, it firms up into a protective shell that moves with the seasons. To understand why this works, you have to picture the leather as a thirsty network of cells that have run dry. Tallow is the mover. It is a soft, saturated fat that travels deep into the pores when we apply a little warmth, coating every internal fiber, so they can slide past each other without grinding. Beeswax is the sealer. It has a higher melting point, so it stays closer to the surface to create a tough, waxy skin that sheds water. If you use only liquid oils, the leather often becomes soggy and loses its strength. The wax provides the backbone that keeps the boot from stretching out of shape when it gets wet. This treatment is for your heavy-duty, smooth-grain leather, farm boots, hikers, and the kind of footwear that sees the inside of a barn or a construction site. It is a poor fit for suede or nubuck. Those leathers have a fuzzy nap that tallow will flatten and darken permanently. Likewise, do not try this on vegan leather. Those are synthetic materials, and since plastic has no pores to drink the oil, you will just end up with a greasy film that never dries and eventually ruins your trousers. This is for honest cowhide that needs to breathe and move. You only need 2 ingredients: rendered beef tallow and pure beeswax. It is vital that the tallow is clean and salt-free. I don't use kitchen drippings from a roast because the salt and seasonings left in the fat will actually speed up the rot you are trying to prevent. I also stay away from paraffin wax. It is a petroleum product that gets brittle and flakes off when the winter air turns bitter. Your tools are just as simple. You will need a clean cotton rag and an old stiff bristled toothbrush. That brush is for the welt, which is the tight crevice where the upper leather meets the sole. We use a ratio of 3 parts tallow to 1 part beeswax by volume. This creates a soft paste with the consistency of butter. If you live where the sun is fierce, you might move toward a 2-to-1 mix to keep the grease from getting tacky in the heat. When we melt these together, it must be done in a jar set inside a pot of water, a double boiler. Never put wax over an open flame, or you risk a flash fire that is very hard to put out. You must also keep that 120-degree limit in mind for the leather itself. If the boot gets hotter than a warm bath, the collagen fibers will shrink and the boot is ruined forever. I start by making sure the boots are as clean as a whistle. I use a damp cloth to lift away any gray salt lines or dried mud, then let them sit until they are bone dry. If you try to grease a damp boot, you are just sealing the moisture inside, which is an invitation for the leather to rot from the middle out. Once the leather feels dry and a bit stiff to the touch, it is ready to be fed. While the boots are drying, I prepare the grease using 3 parts tallow and 1 part beeswax by volume. I place the ingredients into a wide-mouthed glass jar and set that jar inside a small pot with 2 inches of water. This is our double boiler. I keep the heat low, never letting the water reach a rolling boil, and stir the mixture with a clean splinter of wood until the wax has fully dissolved into the fat. It will look like clear, molten gold. I set the jar on the table and let it cool until it thickens into a soft, creamy paste that I can easily scoop with a cloth. If it's too hard, it won't spread. If it's liquid, it's too hot to put on a hide. Before the first dab of grease touches the boot, we have to wake up the pores. I use a hair dryer on the low setting, moving it constantly so the heat never builds up in one spot. I keep checking the temperature with the back of my hand. We want the leather to feel warm and receptive like a person's skin. If the leather becomes hot enough to sting your hand, you have reached that 120-degree limit I mentioned. And you must stop immediately before the collagen fibers begin to cook and shrink. When the boot is just comfortably warm, I take a clean cotton rag and scoop up a dollop of the grease about the size of a walnut. I start at the toe and work my way back, rubbing in firm circular motions. The leather drinks the grease almost as fast as I can apply it, turning a deep, rich chocolate color. I pay extra attention to the flex points, those areas across the top of the foot where the leather bends every time you take a step. These are the places where the internal fibers are under the most stress and need the most lubrication. I rub the grease in until the leather won't take any more and begins to look a bit shiny. Next, I take that old stiff bristled toothbrush and dip it into the jar. I work the grease deep into the welt, which is that little gutter where the upper leather meets the sole. I scrub it right into the stitching. Cotton and linen threads used in boot making are prone to soaking up salt water and rotting away long before the leather does. By packing this waxy grease into the seams, I am building a dam that keeps the moisture out of the skeleton of the boot. I go all the way around the heel and back again, making sure no thread is left dry. Once the boots are fully coated, I set them in a warm room, not by a fire, to rest for at least an hour. This gives the tallow time to travel deep into the hide. When I come back, I look for any dull matte patches. If a spot looks dry, it means the leather was particularly thirsty there, and I give it a second light coat. Finally, I take a fresh, dry cloth and buff the entire surface to remove any excess grease that didn't soak in. This prevents the boots from being too tacky and catching every bit of dust from the road. When I'm finished, the leather feels heavy, supple, and ready for whatever the weather brings. I have to be plain with you about the look of your boots after this. You are choosing function over fashion. That light, honey-colored leather will turn the color of wet earth or dark molasses. There is no washing this grease out to get the old color back. If you have a pair of boots you wear to town to look sharp, you might want to think twice. But for the person whose boots are a tool for the barn or the woods, that deep color is the sign of a hide that is well fed. If the leather is already starting to flake like a lizard skin, this grease will stop the rot from going deeper, but it won't heal the scars. Those cracks are broken fibers, and once they snap, they stay snapped. You also need to look at the inside of your boot. Many modern hikers have a waterproof, breathable liner sewn behind the leather. This grease is so effective at sealing pores that it can stop those liners from letting your own sweat escape. You might find your socks getting a bit swampy in the summer if you use a heavy tallow coat on a boot designed to breathe. If your boots have nylon panels mixed in with the leather, keep the grease on the cowhide only. Fat won't do anything for fabric except make it a magnet for dust and hay chaff. I have seen folks get over-eager and try to use whatever oil is in the kitchen pantry. Never use vegetable oils like corn, soy, or olive oil on your leather. These are unsaturated fats that have a nasty habit of going rancid. After a week in a warm mudroom, those boots will start to smell like old salad dressing, and that is a scent you cannot easily scrub away. More importantly, those thin oils can actually soften the leather too much, making it soggy, so it loses its ability to support your ankle. Pure beef tallow is a saturated fat. It is stable and stays where you put it. Watch for the return of those white, chalky lines. That is the salt telling you the barrier is wearing thin. Usually, a good greasing in late October and another in the heart of February will see you through a Lancaster winter. But do not overdo it. If the leather feels mushy when you press it with a thumb, give it a rest. You want the hide to be firm and resilient, not soft like a piece of dough. Lastly, know when the job is too big for a rag in a jar. If the sole is flapping or the stitching in the welt has vanished, you need a cobbler. This grease protects threads, but it won't sew a boot back together. If the leather is already cooked from high heat and feels hard as a board, it is beyond any help I can give. Once the boots have cooled and the wax has set, I like to perform one final check. I take a spoonful of pump water and let a single drop fall onto the toe. It should sit there, perfectly round and clear, or roll off like a marble on a slate floor. If the water spreads out and the leather turns dark under the drop, it means the hide is still thirsty or you missed a spot with the wax. That is your signal to go back and give it another light rub. But when you see that bead of water dancing on the surface, you know the road salt cannot get in to do its thieving work. You can also feel the difference just by picking them up. The leather should feel meaty and resilient in your grip, not papery, hollow, or stiff. When you bend the boot now, it does not groan or crackle. It moves with a quiet, supple weight that tells you the internal protein fibers are gliding past each other in a bed of clean, saturated fat. It is a satisfying thing to hold a tool that is truly ready for the task. You have taken a piece of a cow's hide and returned to it the very lipids that the winter wind and the slush tried to steal. My brother Abraham, who spends his days framing barns, often says that a man who doesn't care for his tools doesn't deserve the work they do for him. He's right, of course. Taking 20 minutes to melt a little tallow and rub it into the seams isn't just about saving the $150 for a new pair of leather boots, though that is a fine thing for the household budget. It is about stewardship. It is about being a good manager of the material things we have been given, so we are not always running to a store to replace what we could have preserved. I am curious to know how long you have kept your own favorite pair of boots going. Tell me the brand and what you use to keep them soft in the comments. We all benefit when we share what we have learned. Next time, I think we will look at how to pull the deep orange rust off a garden spade and sharpen the edge so it bites into the spring soil. Stay frugal, stay free,